What's up? Hey, hello, everyone. Wow. So today we are going to be talking about the episode before the merge of Survivor Season 37, David vs. Goliath. I personally was happy to see Angelina stay this episode. Otherwise, we would have had Natalie and Angelina, two females who get a lot of confessionals on this season, go home. So my name is Rachel.
And I'm Alyssa, and I'm happy that Angelina didn't go home, but I also wish that it didn't have to be Lirsa. Like, I wish that it had been somebody else, just because, like, we've seen a lot of females going home, and, like, for Lirsa, at least, it was, like, I thought after the Natalie vote out, it would be a cool, like, underdog story if she was almost voted out, and then, like, she climbed to the top or whatever, but that's not what happened.
True. It is really interesting because once you're on the chopping block, it's difficult for you to get off the chopping block, I guess, because for the three tribal councils Lirsa went to, she was always like, one of the people that could go home. And then it's interesting because Nick may have been on the chopping block, whatever, at the Pat going home send off, but then he was able to get off the chopping block, whereas for someone else, it's more difficult to get off the chopping block.
Yeah, I also feel like part of Nick being easy for him to get off the chopping block is because they never got to Tribal and talked about all the reasons they didn't like him. And I feel like one of the things about Tribal is that when you start airing all your grievances and you're like, this is the reason why I didn't like this person, that kind of solidifies everything in your mind. Because you're like, yeah, they really were sucky. I don't want them here anymore. So then it makes it easier for you to go after them again because you've already thought about all the reasons they suck.
Yeah, definitely drawing the tribal lines. And yeah, Angelina is now, or she was, I guess, last week too, but she is the female with the most number of confessionals at 17. After this episode, Mike and Nick are tied for first with 20, which is really interesting. I feel like Nick was first last week in number of confessionals, and then Mike jumped up there too. And it could also just be like they've gone back-to-back tribal, so they've been getting more airtime. But even the other weeks when they weren't going to tribal and they're still tied for first with 20. Christian, obviously, he's third right now with 18 confessionals. Angelina's fourth with 17. And then Davey is fifth. It's a big drop down to 13. Him and Gabby both have 13, which makes sense. I feel like those are the top 6, 7 people that a lot of the fans really like. And I guess it goes to show they are getting more airtime, so they are more liked by people.
Yeah, and then Allison is the person with the least number of confessionals. She only has 5 confessionals, and 2 of them were in this past episode that just aired. And then last episode, John and Alec both got 0 confessionals, and they're in second to last and third to last, respectively.
Yeah, which I thought was interesting because I feel like we see a lot of John, or maybe it's just his presence, especially with the brochachos and everything like that. I feel like he's not forgotten, whereas someone like Allison, she's more forgotten, even though she may be more in the seams rather than someone like Gabby, who we're always seeing these confessionals of she's feeling outside the loop. So it's really interesting. John is always there whenever he's not actually there having a confessional. So it's really weird.
Yeah, and in the 6 episodes that have aired, only 2 people have gotten 0 confessionals more than once. And that's Alec and Allison, who are in the bottom 2 places. So I thought that was interesting because everyone else has only had 0 confessionals in 1 episode. So it's interesting because I feel like they're a lot more balanced than they normally are, because I feel like we went like 3 or 4 episodes without hearing from some people like last season, or especially in Second Chances, there were some people I was like, are they even still on this island? So that's interesting.
Yeah, so interesting with the confessional counts. Someone has been posting them on Facebook if you're interested in like looking on one of the Facebook groups for Survivor. So it is really interesting. So jumping into this episode, we see Angelina and the jacket. play out basically. And I thought it was really interesting with the editing, how last week they sort of kept all the viewers in the dark. And if you weren't looking on Twitter or any other sources, it'd be sort of like a cliffhanger. Did Angelina purposely throw her vote? Was she acting? Did she not? Well, like, was she not in the loop? Turns out this episode we see, and the like last time on Survivor, they showed her talking when she played her vote. She was acting. And like, I don't know, when we saw this episode start, I was nervous because everyone was like, Angelina's a sketchball. You know, the jacket is more important than Lyrsa's life in the game. What are you willing to do for $1 million? And it's also like, one vote, sure, you maybe know that the plan was to vote Natalie out and to keep Lyrsa, but throwing your vote on a person, you know, is never good because no one wants to be that scapegoat. You never want your name thrown out there, even as like the backup plan, because you never know what could happen. Even when people are splitting votes for idols and you bring up someone's name as a backup, no one wants that. And we see it in numerous seasons in the past where people have an issue with their name being brought up, even if it's the backup plan.
Yeah, and I think that there's also something to be said for the fact that Angelina was like a good actress or whatever. So unless Angelina did come out and say like, I only did it for the jacket, but then it's like, do you actually believe her? Or do you think that she was just out of the loop and wanted Lyrsa out anyways? And so it's like, the story that she's telling is the truth, but it could very well not be the truth. And like, it was right of Lyrsa, I think, to be wary of Angelina after this vote.
Yeah, because it's like, how can you trust someone in your alliance or alliance per se if they're willing to throw you under the bus for a jacket? And yes, like, okay, you might want something more to keep you warm at night so you're able to sleep a little bit longer. You're able to have that mental focus for the challenges the next day, everything like that. But seemingly, same thing like we said last week, doing it at tribal council, I feel like the better way is to do it in private and make a deal like, hey, you know, we're buddies. If you're voted out, I'll give you XYZ. If I'm voted out, like, you can have XYZ of my things kind of thing, rather than making it sort of like a spectacle at tribal council in front of everyone. And so this episode, we do see Mike, Nick, and Lyrsa realizing that Angelina was really sketchy. So I was afraid for her during this episode. I'm like, damn, we're going to have the most confessional getting woman gone right before the merge. That's going to suck a lot.
Yeah, and I think one of the bad things about this is it's not like Angelina is now out of the woods because she escaped this vote. Like, all of those people still think that she's playing too hard, and the only reason that Mike didn't like go for her is because he was worried he would get his own throat slit by the Goliaths. But I wouldn't be surprised if she was the first Goliath vote out after the merge. Like, I think they're going to try to vote out a couple of Davids first, but we always know that never goes as planned. And so I think that Angelina has a good chance of being like an early merge boot just because no one trusts her. And it's one of those things where we talk a lot about how people who go strong out of the gate normally don't get as far because people are threatened by them. And I feel like that's one of the things that might happen to Angelina, where she started playing really early in the game and then it's going to come back and bite her.
No, I 100% agree. At the end of this podcast, when we talk about merge predictions and stuff like that, like, that's the same kind of route that I was thinking about Angelina, which I guess we'll see what happens during this episode. The immunity challenge, really cool, I guess, like a really fun challenge. The green team was just so OP, literally only have to saucer that big thing one time. I'm like, damn, you know, the challenge was so easy because they can just do it so quick. And then you see purple sucking so bad and they have to go 3 times. Mike drops the entire saucer. And it was really hard to watch them suffer through it so much. It was honestly so sad to watch. And, you know, it's weird because you can't just give up and like sit down in an immunity challenge because you were basically giving up someone's dreams and crushing their hopes and dreams at that moment when you lose the immunity challenge. And I think it was really interesting after the challenge, the way people talked. So Mike got a lot of airtime right after the challenge, and he was all like, I'm so sad someone has to go. You know, I don't want to see someone else voted out. And so it's really interesting where these people sort of know their place in the tribe, and Mike is able to talk in that like third person where it's like, we're going to tribal, but I'm not scared for myself. I'm sad that someone else is leaving, versus someone like Lyrsa, who is probably freaking angry that they're going to tribal council because their neck is on the chopping block, and then they have to talk about themselves. Like, I'm scared to go to tribal because I might be getting voted out, versus Mike, who's like, someone else is going home. I'm sad.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because when Mike first said that, I was like, is this foreshadowing Mike going home? Because I feel like whenever after the immunity challenge, someone is like, well, it's not going to be me going home tonight. That's always when they get voted out. Yep. I was like, Mike isn't including himself in like the list of people that could go home. So does that mean he's the one going home? I like tied myself in knots about it because I was like, this could be foreshadowing, or this could just be Mike giving his honest opinion. So I thought it was interesting too, because it was basically Mike's fault that they couldn't win, because like he was the one who dropped the saucer. He was the one who was slowing them down through most of the challenge. And yet it's like, because they're so close to the merge, they're not thinking like, oh, we should vote Mike out to make our tribe stronger. They're thinking about like alliances and where it's going to take them when the merge happens.
Yeah, and honestly, from the start, if you look at the tribes, Purple, I don't know, where are their assets for the immunity challenge? I feel like Angelina's good at puzzles and physically strong, but then where are other people pulling their weight? Mike's like the oldest dude on the season. You vote out Natalie, who sat out of multiple challenges already, and we saw can't do a puzzle. And then Lyrsa, like, I don't know. So they're just like, their tribe is sucky compared to the Johnny Mundo, you know, Dan, Allison, Goliath, and then the two really good smart people at Puzzle Tribe. And I'm like, sucks a lot.
Yeah, I feel like Mike should be good at puzzles, because that seems like kind of to be in his wheelhouse. Like, I feel like if there was one of the word puzzles, he'd be really good at it because he's a writer. So he probably knows a lot of words. You can quote me on that. But like, it feels like none of the puzzles really like were to Jabeni's advantage. I don't know. I feel like if I was the producers, I would want to make it so the like tribe in last place at least has a fighting chance. And like, honestly, Jabeni never had a chance in this thing.
Dude, yeah. Even Orange has people like Davy and Carl and Elizabeth, all good at slingshotting, and that has come up. We saw this episode Kara and Alec do fine at the puzzles, so they got people. Yeah, sucks. Purple just, at least they're merging, so they don't have to suffer anymore, because I don't really see where anyone's pulling their weight on that tribe.
Yeah, Purple is kind of like the dead weight that I feel like is going to end up getting voted out first, because it's like, who wants to keep them around? But yeah, I'm very happy they're merging, because I think it would be really difficult to watch them suffer through another immunity challenge and another loss, because like, yikes.
Yeah, so it's an interesting dilemma. I feel like who to vote for. Mike was really, I guess, you know, the deciding factor on this vote on whether to go with Nick and Lyrsa or to go with Angelina and the Goliaths. And it's interesting because when they walked into the reward challenge and they're like, oh, Natalie was voted out last tribal council, they pan to the Goliath's faces, specifically Dan and John, and they have these really shocked faces. And then right after the reward challenge before commercial, Mike gets another confessional where it cuts to those faces again of Dan and John when Mike's talking about the Goliaths didn't look too happy, pan to Dan and John. And I'm like, oh, shoot, like compared to the Alec sending Natalia home, it seemed like more people had shocked faces like, oh my God, this has happened twice now where the Goliaths have had the majority and yet somehow screwed it up per se, or willing to flip on their own tribal lines to vote a Goliath out and keep these Davids. Like, what the F is happening on these other tribes? Thought we were Goliath strong kind of thing. We had that pact, like Natalie was saying last episode. Would have been cool to see a John and Natalie alliance. I am not going to lie.
I think it's interesting just because it's like, you also hear Allison say, like, I don't think this game should be David versus Goliath. And I think that the only Goliaths who are really into the whole Goliath strong thing is like the big meaty guys who need the other Goliaths on their side not to get voted out as soon as the merge happens. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, the meat shield like Jeremy has talked about before, which I guess it's true. We're gonna when we talk about the merge, it's literally a bro chacho down. Like, god damn it. But even numbers 7-7 right now before this vote out, and then you're probably thinking merge next week because it is 13, you know, with B and Pat going home at sort of like weird times kind of thing. It seems a little bit sped up, but then usually tribes have been merging this big. Some people were really like angry that it's the merge next week, but like if you look back at previous seasons, the tribes have been merging at 13, so I really don't see why people are so pissed off about things. But 2-2 on this tribe, I'm like, they better not freaking go to rocks pre-merge. That would be the dumbest thing to do if you're willing, you know, to risk your life in Survivor to go to rocks at a 2-2 vote before the freaking merge even happens.
That would be so lit, though. Like, I live for some drama, and I feel like I would want it to happen just for the drama of it. So
yeah, I mean, I guess it would be interesting. I think the rules are different because, like, if you voted Angelina and Alyssa, they wouldn't become safe, and then like Mike and Nick would draw rocks. Like, then you're just basically voting yourself out if the rules aren't different for like a 4-person rock draw kind of thing. I think everyone draws rocks. So that, I guess that would be interesting, but in such a small tribe, I feel like you should do what you can to make it not rocks when it is like the pivotal merge vote and you're tied 7-7, say, if they merged last week kind of thing. Then you sort of want to stick it out. But if there is a way that you can get one person to flip into the majority, I don't know. I would rather not put it up to a 1 in 7 chance of drawing the whatever colored rock.
Yeah, I feel like, yeah, chance is weird. Someone did a lot of fancy math about like when it was good to go to rocks and like which position you should draw rocks in order to ensure that you're going to like have the highest chance of not getting the rock or whatever. So I think that would be interesting math, and like, should you go to rocks at 4 would also be another interesting math thingy. I wish I knew how to math. I don't.
Yeah, so I think like this is semi-pivotal. Like, yeah, this is a pretty important vote right before the merge, especially because it is tied numbers for these people to make a decision and who has the quote-unquote majority at the merge. Alyssa straight up saying no to Angelina. We saw it with like Jeremy and Natalie this season. Like, why do you straight up say no to people who are trying to extend an olive branch and work with you, or maybe talk strategy kind of thing? It's just, why? I don't necessarily see the reasoning to saying no straight up, because you're just limiting your options. Maybe sometime in the game you may have to reopen that door. It's always good to have that door open, I guess. Angelina said she's open-minded to working with Alyssa, but not anymore after Alyssa gives her the cold shoulder. And it's just sort of like, I don't know. Why not keep your doors open? Because it's better to have someone who is willing to talk strategy with you, like with Angelina, rather than when Gabby was saying, like, Dan does not talk strategy to her at all. Then you know you're not working on the same team. At least if someone's willing to extend that branch to like work with you, why not at least have it in your back pocket?
I think it's one of those things where it's very difficult to say, like, I'm going to play this with my head and not with my heart, because it's like you want to stick to your principles or whatever and be like, I don't want to work with someone who treats me like I'm worth less than a jacket. But at the same time, you kind of have to do that in order to like be good at Survivor, you know, where like it might make you feel icky at the moment, but
yeah, you just gotta do it, you know? Sleep with the people you hate. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. So I think, I don't know, nail in the coffin, but like not really, because it's really up to Mike, I think, is the pivotal person this vote. And then Nick, sort of as like the conjunction, whether Nick is able to convince Mike to vote Angelina out, or whether Mike is able to convince Nick to keep Angelina. So, you know, yeah, bad move for Lyrsa, obviously. She was the one voted out. Good for TV, though, because I do think Angelina is a more interesting character. She's getting more confessionals, so she's more seen on the TV rather than Lyrsa. Angelina, good move, I guess, because she wasn't the one voted out. Really, I don't know about those. Strategic-wise, I feel like you should be voting Angelina out. She is a bigger threat come the merge. She has more winner potential than Lyrsa. But then, like Mike said, you screw over all the Goliaths, because then Davids have a 7-6 majority in the merge next week.
yeah, and the thing about, like I said earlier, I feel like the main reasoning behind Mike's choice was the fact that he did not want to get his throat slit by the other Goliaths. So
yeah,
I'm not sure if there was ever a chance for Nick to convince him otherwise.
Yeah, which I think it's interesting, because they're like, you get rid of someone. I mean, I guess we technically don't know how close Nick and Lyrsa are. Nick says he's not that close with Lyrsa, but like he could be lying. They've been together this entire time, kind of thing. So, you know, Lyrsa would have been less of a threat, probably won't win anything come the merge. Whereas Angelina, they verbally say, you know, they don't trust her. She's more schemy, but then maybe it is better to keep the person you visibly know is a slimy slime ball, rather than someone like Lyrsa who's just going to keep sliding by. And next thing you know, oh, we didn't vote her out, and somehow she's gotten to final tribal council because people overlooked her, I guess. But at least everyone is visibly aware that they don't trust Angelina, so it's not like they're getting played by her. Mike, I think it's a good move. You know, there's bigger targets than Mike come the merge, and so him and Nick are very close now. Plus, the Goliaths do have the 7-6 majority, so I don't see Mike being the merge boot, so I guess that's always good for him, and you do want to be on the right side of the numbers at the merge. Nick, I think it solidifies his alliance with Mike, so Rockstar Alliance, yes. You know, he kept a bigger target in the game in Angelina, because I feel like more people would be on board to vote someone like Angelina out. And I think Nick can probably be brought into the Brochachos next week, because he is close with Christian. And then the Brochachos wanted to bring in Alec already. And so if you rekindle the Nick Christian thing, maybe Nick can be a part of the Brochachos as well. Then Nick has a lot of options coming merge.
Yeah, I feel like with Angelina, it's definitely like one of those better the devil you know thing. And it's like Lyrsa, I feel like, is the kind of person who could become very scrappy if she was backed into a corner. And I don't think that she would like having been repeatedly on the bottom. So in the merge, I feel like she could have definitely maneuvered to a better position. And then, like you said, she could keep sliding by and then make it to final tribal. Whereas Angelina, they're hopefully going to have some sort of plan of when or how to get her out.
Yeah, so definitely Angelina, big target, super smart. She thinks, I guess, she's controlling a lot of the votes. She is controlling some of the votes. She got the Jeremy vote out thing, so it's a slippery slope, I think, for Angelina. So Moving on, I guess, to the other people on this episode.
Christian, right, there were other people.
Yeah, like, it's not all about the purple tribe. So Christian goes snorkeling, and he has this coming, not of age, but like coming into his own confessional. And he's so funny when he was commentating about his fishing, like, oh, potential energy, kinetic energy. Like, he should just read audiobooks or like commentate people's lives. It'd be so interesting. But he's always so squinty in his confessionals. He's like hunched over and like squinting at the camera. I'm like, God damn. But yeah, he has this coming into his own confessional about how he's left out in real life. He's becoming a Goliath figure from David Origins. Really sad confessional, all that inspirational music, and everyone is comparing Christian to the better version of Cochrane, which I thought is funny.
I definitely think Christian's a lot less annoying than Cochrane, and like I can't explain why I believe that, because it's like they're basically the same. I just think that Christian is like, I genuinely believe that he doesn't realize how big of a dork he's being. Whereas with Cochrane, I always got the sense that like he knew and he was like playing it up for the cameras.
Yeah, I feel like Cochrane was trying to be maybe that stereotype or archetype, being quirky, relatable, haha, funny, versus Christian is just like naturally quirky and fun, and everyone loves him. Like, it's so cute.
Yeah, and I think that like also what he was saying about like potential energy and kinetic energy, I'm in a physics class right now, and that's like what we're talking about in class. And the whole time I was like, Christian, stop, you're making my head hurt.
It's definitely like a nice lesson in some physics that he taught us. I think Christian, I mean, I don't think he's going to be the merge boot. We see Angelina bring up Christian's name in the preview, but then we also see little clips of the uprising of Davids and Goliaths working together. Haha. So I feel like people like Christian enough, and Christian is in enough pockets of alliances that people won't want to vote him out. Especially now, I feel like in a few episodes, in a few weeks, whatever, people realize he is a target and he's super likable and has the potential to win the game. But right now, because he has his fingers in so many pots, it wouldn't make sense to vote him out, especially like when he's in 6 different alliances.
Yeah, like don't vote someone out who's gonna like have people who will like avenge them. Because yeah, that's just, you don't want to piss people off.
Yeah, so I think people like him, he's funny, and the people on the tribes need him, so the people in his alliances won't want to vote him out next week, I personally feel like, but they do realize he is a threat to win the game, so someone to keep your eye on. But I think he's too paramount in many people's Survivor stories right now to vote out as the merge boot.
Yeah, I think that's a very like succinct summary of all of it.
Yes. So we also see Gabby this episode. I really liked her quote that like hope is not a strategy, so she needs to take things into her own hands. She can't just keep hoping that her tribe wins immunity. And they do win immunity, but I think Gabby definitely is saved throughout this like pre-merge part of the game because they haven't been going to tribal council. So it also really goes to show how Survivor is a lot of luck. You need to be lucky and being put onto a good tribe that doesn't go to tribal, because if green, what color are they? If green tribe went to tribal once or twice like purple tribe did, Gabby probably would have been one of the 2 people to be voted out. So I think it's lucky on them to be on such a good tribe that keeps on winning. So she says Dan doesn't talk to her, which is like, it's literally going to be a bro down at the merge. Alyssa and I were talking about it. Like, what? We have 5 females left and 8 males, I guess. So it's a lot of dudes.
And I think no male was voted out. It was only Pat who was medevaced, right?
Yes, only Pat, which like is a quasi vote. It's not even like they're really voting some guy out.
Oh no, Jeremy got voted out.
Oh, you're right. Jeremy also left.
I don't even remember him anymore, so must not have been that important. I always feel bad when we talk about the early vote outs because I'm like, wait, who is that person? So
Yeah, I think it's good. This episode, we finally see something from Allison. She correctly says, she's worried about the brochachos. Those three dudes had so many scenes of just them like sitting around talking. And I'm like, that's so sketch to see. Like, if you don't realize that some kind of alliance is forming between them, then you probably have some eye issues and need to get that checked out. But like, good for them realizing that this threesome of the guys is like forming. And I think Allison says she's down to blindside Dan. It's not if, it's when. So it's really, really good. I'm glad we're seeing stuff from Allison. I am hoping, like we said last week, that this is foreshadowing a Dan blindside. A lot of people want to see him voted out with 2 idols. So I think that would be funny. But I don't know. I think with Dan, he talks about Kara again this episode. And I'm
oh
like,
my God, yeah. I was like, what the fuck?
I'm like, dude, stop. You're not even on the same tribe with her. Like, why do you verbally, and it makes television that you miss her. So I'm like, Dan is probably going to tell her that he found another idol. Kara is smart at playing the game. She's good when we talk about Elizabeth. Like, she did perfectly in that Elizabeth episode. But like, Kara's probably going to flip and be the demise of Dan. So honestly, that'd be amazing. Kara tells people that he has 2 idols, but she's able to keep him calm enough to not play any idol, and then he gets voted out.
Yeah, I just think the whole Kara and Dan situation, like, I feel like they're trying to make me like them, and I don't. So,
Yeah, I think it is something worrisome. I think because with the brochachos especially, they will probably have the majority come the merge. If you take those 3, then you bring in like Gabby, maybe, but Dan doesn't talk to Gabby. So a quasi member of this big alliance. And then you also bring in like Nick and Alec. And then you're at 5. You just need what, 2 more to get to 7, and then it's a 7-6. So nervous about that, but I think, I don't know. I'm hoping Allison like doesn't become a Laurel and she becomes like she's in with the brochacho group that has the majority at the merge, which isn't just like those 3, but they bring in other people and sort of like other members. And she never makes the move to blindside Dan. I want to see Allison make a move to blindside Dan. I don't want her to become a Laurel and just like let it slide.
Yeah, I feel like Allison hasn't really been on anyone's radar at this point, and I personally would like to see her like do something so that she doesn't get voted out and have everyone be like, she was on that season. So
yeah, I think good stuff if she is, I guess, able to get more screen time. That's sort of weird to say because it's not really in her power to be more interesting or get more screen time or whatever. But moving on to the Elizabeth issue. I mean, this was just really uncomfortable to watch as well. Like, it makes sense she blows up, I guess, because she can't sleep, her back hurts, and you want any advantage you have in the game to get more sleep so you can think faster. And then for some reason, everyone else freaks out too. And I'm like, Carl, you're sleeping in the middle of the freaking day and you're pissed off at Elizabeth for chopping wood. Like, the sun is freaking up. It's not like she's chopping wood at 3 a.m.
I just think it's one of those things where everyone's emotions got so high so quickly that none of them really stop to think and be like, it's not actually that big of a deal. Why are we fighting over this? So
yeah, it was just weird. And like, I think we're seeing tensions they aren't showing on TV. The secret scene, we see Carl annoyed with Elizabeth as well. So there is a rift seemingly between Carl and Elizabeth that might not be as portrayed on television that it is behind the scenes. So it seems like they're having issues with each other. Kara enjoys the rift, rightfully so. Like, you always want that because especially on these tiny ass tribes, any kind of fighting is good fighting.
Yeah, especially because like Carl and Elizabeth, people kind of expected them to be tight because they were both Davids and they were both from like similar backgrounds as far as like being country people. So I thought it was interesting that they fought, but they also kind of explained, well, Carl explained why he wasn't as big of a fan of Elizabeth. So I just feel like this is one of those things where if I didn't know that Survivor was like real, I would be like, that's so scripted. This doesn't make any sense why they're fighting over this. But
like, producers, oh, let's have some drama. Let's have them fight with some bamboo.
yeah.
Yeah, I feel like this debacle doesn't necessarily screw over Elizabeth's game. I don't see Elizabeth being the first merge boot or anything like that because there seemingly are bigger targets, bigger fish to fry in the sea right now. But maybe she could be in hot water if Carl is very vocal in saying, like, I hate Elizabeth. We need to vote her out. And then, like, okay, it's easy first boot at the merge. People are on board. If Elizabeth does something like crazy or annoying, then people may be on board. But I feel like if everyone keeps their cool at the merge, which seemingly people know how to keep their mouth shut, like, I think Elizabeth can be fine. Carl can be fine if he just doesn't, like, if he just plays his cool and doesn't blow up the whole him and Elizabeth feud, if he just gets on board with whatever the majority is saying. But I can see, like, Carl and Elizabeth being in a minority come the merge.
Yeah, and I can also see them fighting against each other being even more bad news for their alliance because, like, it already sucks to be in the minority, but it sucks even more if, like, people within your minority group are fighting. So then it's like you have two factions within an already small group, and then it's like you can't do anything against the majority because you're too busy fighting with each other.
Yeah, because I definitely, like, really don't see them in the top 7, so that would be a majority in the 13 people coming next week. I feel like if all 12 people are on board to vote one person as, like, the easy vote off at the merge, then they would probably be in the loop to get, like, in the 12 to vote the one person out. But with the people this season, I don't see a 12-1 vote next week. I definitely see it's going to be split. And especially at the merge, you want to be in the majority or the right side of the numbers. Even if you aren't at the top of the totem pole, I think just voting in the right way and being in with some people, you can always fix it and work your way up the totem pole. So I think Carl, Davy, Elizabeth saving grace would be that Davy has an idol and Carl has the idol nullifier. And I think they could do a lot with that if they are in the minority and they need to use it.
Yeah, I think that also one of the things you said, like if everyone's on board with one person being voted out, it might also be a thing where if like the minority finds out who's being voted out among them, some of them might flip so that they can gain a little bit of favor. Because it's like if you vote with the majority, even if you don't really like that vote, it's still like, you know,
people can still be trustworthy.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I totally agree. I feel like top 7, I think that the other Davids have better chances. I think Christian can be in the majority. Nick could be pulled into the majority. Gabby maybe could be pulled into the majority via Christian, or people could be wary of Gabby because the Christian and Gabby thing is too close. I think Alec, since he has been with like Carl and Elizabeth, could maybe bring in those people as like a little second group. Like, hey, I'm Alec. I'm in with the Bro Chacho main alliance, but I like you, and so I'm going to fill you in on the holes of the plan. So they're like in vitro part of the main group.
Yeah, it's... I feel like the merge has a lot of potential for change, and I'm really hoping that like if Christian and Gabby get targeted because they're a power couple, then Christian is the one who goes home, just because it's like, if you vote out Gabby, you're really only voting out one of Christian's many allies, but if you vote out Christian, you've like hamstringed Gabby, so.
No, 100%. But then we always see in these like power couple relationships, they always vote out the female to weaken the male. And I would really be interested in seeing a storyline for Gabby that isn't so focused on Christian, because I feel like whenever Gabby talks, she's talking about Christian. She's like, Christian's in with the group, but I'm not in with the group. Christian's so cool, but I'm not as cool. So I would really love to see a Gabby coming into her own, as we saw Christian come into his own this episode, where Gabby isn't so like connected by Christian, and having Christian be voted out, like you're saying, that eliminates so many of his little pockets of alliances, because then he doesn't have the Mason-Dixon line. He doesn't have the brochachos. Like, you're cutting out the person that brings like 6 people together to make your main alliance.
Yeah, it's like, if every mini alliance is like a spoke, Christian is the center that makes the wheel turn around.
Yeah.
And that was a great metaphor. I'm proud of myself.
And yeah, that's why I don't see Christian being voted out next week. I don't also think that people will stay David versus Goliath. I think the people this season came to play, and they're willing to cross these tribal lines. Thank freaking God. And I think, smart move. It would be smart to vote a David out to help with the numbers. So it's a 7-5. So at least, you have the majority in the David versus Goliath tribal lines. That would be the smart per se move to say, I feel like. But then I also don't think that they will go with the easy move of voting some David out that like they don't really know. I feel like it's going to be a big move next week. I think someone from, I don't know, big move, but if voting someone on the David's tribe out would be the perfect big move, because you keep your Goliath numbers and you weaken the Davids. But I do see like big move, but a Goliath going home.
Yeah, I think that a Goliath going home is more likely, just because like there's been so much talk about Goliath strong that I feel like that can't be what happens. Especially because people are shown to be willing to like vote against Goliath if it benefits them personally. And honestly, I'm kind of hoping that the Goliaths end up like screwing themselves over, because they're constantly ready to get rid of other members of their like alliance as long as it benefits them in the short term. So it's like they could be a part of voting out all of their allies and then realize, whoops.
Yeah.
I don't have anyone else.
Jody in the chat section says, if a Goliath flips, do you guys think that Goliath will get the Cochrane treatment in South Pacific and basically be like alienated kind of thing? Which I don't know. I don't really see it being like a 7-6 vote next week with them voting out a Goliath. There's so much intermixing, but I do feel like if the Davids start flipping on each other, I could see Elizabeth being the target after what we said with Elizabeth and Carl. I think because we see Angelina bring up Christian's name in the preview, I think Angelina could be the merge boot next week.
I think Angelina could be as well, just because like no one sees her as trustworthy. I don't think that the Goliaths will be ostracized, just because I feel like all of the Davids like don't want to burn bridges, because they know that they are going to need the Goliaths for like votes or whatever. So I think that there will be a lot of cross-pollinating between the original tribes, and I don't think that there will be anything like a begonging or like an ostracization of a specific group, just because that's not how you like keep in control of the game, because the more people you have on your side, the easier it is to maintain control. So
no, yeah, I agree. I think people aren't on board to vote Christian. Alex says he doesn't want to vote Christian, but like Alec is all over the freaking place. Like, who knows what he's doing? I really can see an Angelina blindside next week, because coming into the merge, it's all, you're going to talk about what happened the past X amount of days that you were all separated from your little buddies. And I think word will spread that like Angelina voted Natalie out, or like didn't vote Natalie out just to get her jacket kind of thing, which could be very sketchy. And like thinking to the other people, who is Angelina really connected with? Natalia's gone. Will she link back up with Kara and John and Dan kind of thing? And like maybe that can place her in the majority because Dan and John have their brochachos. So that could be her saving grace. I also don't really see a Dan blindside first episode of the merge because Dan is probably going to be in the majority. And if you're in the majority, why are you flipping on your own people? It's too early. So that's also tricky. Then they could easily, if you have your majority, you could easily vote out someone who's in the minority of the Davids that we have, those extra 5 people or whatever.
Yeah, I think also something that could happen would be a David would be the first person to go so that the Goliaths can like solidify their majority and then they can pick off one of their own. Because it's like you don't want to make it a tie between Davids and Goliaths. So if the merge vote is a David, that would then make it easier going forward for you.
No, yeah, that's what I'm saying. The smartest move next week is to bring it down 7-5, have 7 Goliaths, 5 Davids. So even if you want to start like intermingling and voting out your own, at least you have that 2-person buffer. Even better would to bring it down to 7-4 and then you start like killing out your own because 6-6 it's just too risky. But the people this season seem to be like very into intermixing, so I don't necessarily think people will think on the tribal lines of, oh haha, it's 6-6 now, but like you never know.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a very delicate balancing act for everyone involved to see like who ends up getting voted out and when and why. I do think that Dan and Kara are both going to be voted out like soonish though, because if they get back together, they also like clump together, and then you have Christian and Gabby clumping together. It's like 2 power couples is too many.
Yeah, I could see it. I feel like Kara would also go before Dan, which sort of sucks because I feel like Kara is more interesting than Dan, but Dan does have these idols. And so maybe they'll split votes on Kara and Dan, and then he'll play both idols correctly, and then someone else will go home, which I think is interesting. I think we do have multiple people who have winner potential this season, so it is going to be interesting come the merge who like rises to the standard and who falls and ultimately gets voted out. But Nick has been doing really well, this season. He's been controlling multiple things, which I think is good for him. He is the person with the most amount of confessionals. Mike, on the other hand, I don't know. I don't see him winning the game, even though he is tied with Nick for number of confessionals. I do see Mike being voted out. And even if he did make final tribal, I think, which is sort of crappy to say, but I think the money aspect may also play into it because, yeah.
I think Mike is also in a position where he could very easily become a villain, because he was talking about how like he didn't think it would be as hard as it was to vote people out. And so I feel like the fact that he was looking forward to voting people out up until when he actually had to do it was like kind of villainy, I feel like. So I feel like Mike could end up being a foil to whoever does win.
Yeah, heroes versus villains too. Mike White and Natalie Cole. Yeah, I think Christian is doing well. It's an uphill battle for him to make it to final tribal council, I think, compared to Nick, because Nick is more under the radar, like country Southern charm, whereas Christian is more, everyone realizes he's too friendly with everyone. Same thing. I think Gabby, too, could have winner potential, but she does have an uphill battle. She needs Christian to get voted out. That would be how she gets to the end of the game, I feel like. And maybe she has to turn on Christian. That would be a great story. Or Christian turns on Gabby. I feel like one of them has to turn on the other come like final 6 or 7 in order to make it to the end. Or maybe they can make it to the end Dom Wendell style.
I'd love to see a Gabby win. But I'm not sure, just because I feel like she has so many insecurities about like her relationships with other people that she wouldn't like let herself, I feel like, make big moves because she'd be so worried. And it took her a really long time to go from realizing she was in the bottom to actually doing something about it. So I'd like to see Gabby with a little more initiative before I consider her a winner potential. I think Angelina could also win if she stopped pissing people off so much. So she'd probably need to like take a step back after the merge and maybe fly low for a little while and then like use that time to regroup, find new allies who aren't as like about her and the jacket, and then like start making her moves.
No, yeah, I 100% agree. I have Angelina on my list too. I think she just has to chill out a little bit also. Um, and then I think if she starts being under the radar, I think it's good. I think John has done a really good job being under the radar, but he only has gone to one tribal council, and I think he could be a big threat come this individual portion of the game. But we don't really know if he's good at puzzles, so maybe people won't feel threatened by him compared to some other people who are physical and good at puzzles. So I guess we'll see with that aspect. I think John going to the end would have a really good story of like coming into his own kind of thing, but he also has a lot of money, so then it really depends. But then again, I feel like I don't know. A lot of the Goliaths are well off, so maybe money won't be a factor in people voting.
Yeah, I feel like one of the things about Goliath is like they've achieved financial success as like one of the things. So it's like it would be kind of stupid if you would say I'm not going to vote for a Goliath because they're already rich, because then it's like why'd they even bother coming to play this game?
Yeah, I feel like Nick has like the good story of being first to go to college. He wanted to get out and help his community and like the first public defender thing. Davey, I think, could be a dark horse to win the game. We see Davey's really funny on the TV, and I think he could come from left field. I think even if he is in the minority next week, someone like Elizabeth or Carl, I feel like would be voted out before Davey. We see Davey is friends with Alec, and I think that's his in with the in group. So I think Davey could make it really far and potentially win the game if he's able to like lay low right now and not get voted out in the hectic swing of things.
Yeah, I think Davey, I feel like I haven't seen a lot of him for some reason. Like I don't think he's gotten that many confessionals, but he also hasn't like been like Allison, who's totally absent from confessionals. So I don't know what my opinion on Davey is at this moment.
Yeah, I feel like that's like the top 5-6 people who can win the game, which is good. That's like about half of the 13 coming into the merge. Not saying that the other people we haven't talked about have 0% chance. It's just that I feel like these are the people to keep an eye out for, and I could definitely put money on one of these 6 winning the game. Hopefully. I don't know if I'd want to see like other people win the game. Kara maybe could be up there.
Yeah, I think that for me, it's like this time last season when it was coming into merge, we were like, well, the winner is either going to be Dom or Wendell. So I like the fact that there's like a wider spread of characters that could win from different tribes and like different backgrounds and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, so this was us talking about the episode. I am so freaking excited for the merge next week. Like the second best night on television after the premiere and the finale of Survivor every single season. So I think it's ought to be a good one. This season has been great so far with everything that we've been seeing. So I'm super excited. Who do you all think will be the merge boot? Let us know in the comments below. I'm just so excited. Who also do you think has winner potential? So both sides of the coin.
Yeah, let us know in the comments below, and we'll see you guys next week. Bye.